I turned around and went home the same day. Not because I was scared. Because I finally understood. What surprised me wasn't what he said on the phone. It was how calm I felt after hearing it. If you're here because you think this is a story about rage or revenge, it isn't. And if you're here because you've ever trusted someone so completely that you ignored your own instincts, then stay with me. This will make sense soon. I'm Emily Parker. I was 29 when this happened. Married. Settled. Or at least that's what I believed at the time. The trip was his idea. He insisted on it, actually. He said I looked tired. Said I'd been carrying too much lately. Work stress, family stuff, the mental load that comes with being the organized one in a marriage. He framed it as concern. As love. He told me I deserved a break. A solo trip. Time to breathe. I remember laughing when he first suggested it. I wasn't the kind of person who took spontaneous trips alone. I liked routines. Familiar coffee mugs. Evenings that ended the same way most nights. Dinner, quiet conversation, shared silence that felt earned. But he kept bringing it up. Gently. Patiently. Almost rehearsed. Just a few days, he said. Go somewhere peaceful. Let me take care of things here. That should have felt generous. And part of me did feel grateful. But another part, the quieter part, felt displaced. Like a chair moved slightly out of alignment in a room you know by heart. I ignored that feeling. I booked a small coastal town. Nothing dramatic. A place where mornings smelled like salt and afternoons moved slowly. I told myself this was healthy. Normal. Proof of a strong marriage. The night before I left, he hugged me longer than usual. Not tighter. Just longer. His chin rested on my shoulder, and for a brief second, his breathing felt measured. Like he was counting something down. I didn't ask why. The drive there was uneventful. Radio low. Windows cracked. I remember thinking how strange it felt to be alone with my thoughts again. How quiet my mind was once I stopped planning for two. When I arrived, I unpacked carefully. Folded clothes into drawers I'd use for only 3 nights. I lined up my toiletries like I always did. Order comforts me. It always has. That first evening, I walked along the water. I sent him a photo of the sunset. He replied quickly. A heart emoji. So proud of you for doing this. That wording stayed with me longer than it should have. Proud of me, not happy for me. Not missing me. Proud. I went to sleep early. Slept deeply. Too deeply. The next morning felt off in small, unprovable ways. My coffee tasted burnt. The ocean sounded louder than it should have. I checked my phone more than usual, even though there was nothing I was waiting for. By midday, I decided to explore a little farther from town. I was driving when my phone rang. His name lit up the screen. I smiled before answering. Habit. Reflex. I pulled over anyway. Something told me to stop the car. That call lasted less than 3 minutes. By the time it ended, my hands were steady. My chest was quiet. My thoughts were painfully clear. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't even ask him to explain. I put the phone face down on the passenger seat, took a breath, and turned the car around. If you're wondering why I reacted that way, why understanding came before anger, stay with me. I'm not telling this story to expose him. I'm telling it so you'll recognize the moment when your own calm becomes your strength. And I promise, by the time I'm done, you'll understand why that phone call didn't break me. It woke me up. Before that trip, my life felt dependable. Not exciting in a movie trailer way, but solid. Predictable in the sense that the ground beneath me didn't shift when I walked. I used to think that was what safety felt like. We lived in a modest house just outside the city. Nothing fancy. Neutral walls. A small backyard we kept meaning to do something with. On weeknights, I cooked. On weekends, he grilled, even in weather that didn't justify it. We had our roles, and they fit us comfortably. Our mornings were quiet. Coffee brewed while one of us unloaded the dishwasher. We didn't need to fill the space with constant conversation. There was trust in that silence. Or at least, I believed there was. I worked full-time, handled most of the scheduling, the birthdays, the invisible tasks that keep a household functioning. He used to thank me for that. Used to say I was the glue. I wore that label like a badge of honor back then. I didn't realize how heavy it was until later. At night, we sat on opposite ends of the couch, legs occasionally touching. We watched shows we half followed. He'd scroll on his phone. I'd rest my head back and let the day drain out of me. Sometimes he'd reach for my hand without looking. Those small gestures convinced me everything was fine. I trusted him. Completely. Not blindly. I'd just never been given a reason not to. Looking back, that's what scares me most. Not that he betrayed me, but how thoroughly I believed in the version of our life I'd constructed. The weeks leading up to the trip were busy. Work deadlines stacked up. A family issue that wasn't mine to solve somehow became mine to manage. I was tired, but I told myself that was normal. Everyone gets tired. He noticed. Or at least, he commented on it. "You've been quiet lately," he said one evening while rinsing a plate. "I'm just thinking," I replied. "About what?" "Everything." He nodded, like that answer satisfied him. Too easily. That was the first pause I didn't understand at the time. He started offering to handle things he usually ignored. Running errands. Booking appointments. Encouraging me to take longer baths. At first, it felt like care. Like he was stepping up. But there was a precision to it. A timing that didn't quite match the concern he was showing. I remember one night, a few days before he suggested the trip, I caught him watching me. Not in a romantic way. More like he was assessing something. Measuring. When I looked up, he smiled quickly and looked away. I told myself I was imagining it. The idea of the solo trip came up over dinner. Casual. Almost offhand. "You know," he said, "you might actually enjoy getting away for a bit. Just you. No responsibilities." I laughed, because it felt ridiculous. "Since when do you encourage me to disappear?" I asked. He shrugged. "Since I started noticing how much you give." That sentence landed. It was flattering. Validating. It also shut down the part of me that wanted to ask more questions. We talked about it again the next night. And the next. Each time, he framed it the same way. My well-being. My rest. My needs. By the time I booked the trip, it felt like my idea. That's how persuasion works when it's done gently. The night before I left, I packed while he sat on the bed, scrolling through his phone. I asked him what he planned to do while I was gone. "Probably just work," he said. "Catch up on some stuff." He didn't look up when he said it. That was the second pause. "Now let me ask you something before I go further. Have you ever had that gut feeling that something was off, but you ignored it because you didn't want to believe it? Tell me in the comments. I want to know I'm not alone in this." I zipped my suitcase and stood there for a second longer than necessary. Waiting for something. A joke. A comment. A trace of missing me before I'd even left. Instead, he smiled and said, "You're really going to love it." I kissed him goodnight. Told myself I was overthinking. Told myself this was what trust looked like. And for a while, I believed it. Until the quiet started feeling too intentional. The first real doubt didn't arrive as panic. It came as discomfort. The kind that doesn't have a name yet. That morning by the coast, I woke up before my alarm. The room was still dim, curtains breathing softly with the wind. For a moment, I didn't know where I was, and then I remembered. The trip. The space. The thing I was supposed to enjoy. I reached for my phone without thinking. There was a message from him. Time-stamped earlier than usual. "Hope you slept well. Don't rush today." That might sound thoughtful. At the time, it even registered that way. But something about it felt managed. Like he was reminding me to stay where I was. I brushed it off and got ready. Shower. Coffee downstairs. A quiet breakfast eaten alone at a corner table near the window. I watched couples pass by, hands brushing, conversations half finished. I didn't feel lonely, just separate. Mid-morning, I texted him a photo of the ocean again. No response. An hour passed. Then another. He wasn't usually unreachable. Even during meetings, he'd send a quick reply. A thumbs up. A "looks beautiful." Something. I told myself he was busy. That was the point of the trip, after all. Space. Still, my instinct stirred. Not loudly. Just enough to be noticed. I decided to drive inland. Explore the surrounding area. It felt good to move, to let my thoughts stretch out. The road curved through quiet neighborhoods and small stretches of forest. I turned the radio off. I wanted silence. That's when I noticed the second thing. My location sharing app was still on. We'd turned it on years ago for convenience. Safety. I'd forgotten about it most days. But there it was, showing my route in real time. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. Why would that matter? He wasn't tracking me. We trusted each other. I left it on. At lunch, I finally heard from him. Sorry, back-to-back calls. How's the town? Normal words. Normal tone. But no mention of the photos I'd sent. No questions. No curiosity. I answered honestly. It's nice. Quiet. Good, he replied. Exactly what you needed. There it was again. That phrasing. Not what we needed. What I needed. That afternoon, I walked farther than planned. Past the main shops. Past the tourists. I let myself get tired. Physical fatigue felt easier than the mental kind. When I checked my phone again, there was a missed call from an unknown number. No voicemail. That shouldn't have mattered. But it did. I stared at the screen longer than necessary, waiting for a follow-up that never came. I didn't tell him about it. That night, when I called him, he answered on the second ring. Too quickly. How's everything? He asked. Fine, I said. You? Good. Just winding down. There was background noise. A TV maybe. Or voices. I couldn't be sure. We talked for less than 5 minutes. He didn't ask what I'd done that day. I didn't volunteer much either. The conversation felt thin. Like we were both skimming the surface of something deeper. After we hung up, I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to identify what I was feeling. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't fear. It was alertness. The kind you get when your body senses a pattern shift before your mind catches up. I slept lightly that night. Woke up twice for no reason. Checked my phone both times. No messages. No calls. By morning, the discomfort had settled into something heavier. I was brushing my teeth when my phone buzzed. A notification from the location app. Location access updated. I stared at it, toothbrush paused mid-air. Updated how? I opened the app. Settings looked the same. Sharing still active. No alerts. No explanation. I felt my chest tighten, just slightly. This was the moment I could have asked him directly. Confronted him. Demanded clarity. I didn't. I told myself there was a logical explanation. A software glitch. A coincidence. I didn't want to be the kind of person who saw ghosts where there were none. Instead, I decided to watch. To listen. To wait. Sometimes, waiting tells you more than asking ever could. Pause for a second. What would you have done in my position? Would you have confronted him right then, or waited and watched? Drop your answer below. I really want to know. I packed a small day bag and headed out, telling myself I'd make the most of the trip. But deep down, I wasn't traveling anymore. I was observing. I didn't go looking for proof. That's important to say out loud. What happened next wasn't the result of snooping or suspicions spiraling out of control. It was the result of paying attention when things stopped adding up. That afternoon, the coastal town felt smaller. Familiar already. Like I'd exhausted what it had to offer in less than 48 hours. I sat in a quiet cafe with my phone face down on the table, forcing myself not to check it every few minutes. When I finally picked it up, there was a message from him. Everything okay? You've been quiet. I stared at it longer than necessary. The irony didn't escape me. I typed back, just enjoying the quiet. Isn't that the point? 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then reappeared. Of course, he replied. Take all the time you need. There it was again. Permission. Reinforcement. Like he was managing distance instead of missing me. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again, this time from a number I didn't recognize. I think you should come home. No name. No context. My first reaction wasn't fear. It was irritation. I assumed it was spam or a wrong number. I typed back, who is this? The reply came almost instantly. Someone who thought you should know the truth. My stomach tightened, but my hands stayed steady. I didn't respond right away. I finished my coffee. Paid. Walked outside. Sat on a bench facing the water. Then I typed, "Know what?" There was a pause. Longer this time. "Your husband didn't send you away to rest." I felt the world narrow, not dramatically, not violently, just enough to sharpen everything around me. I typed, "I don't understand." The next message came with a photo. It took my brain a second to process what I was seeing. Familiar kitchen. Familiar counter. Familiar light fixture above the sink. My kitchen. And standing in it, close to the camera, close enough to recognize without doubt, was my husband. Shirt off. Laughing. Looking comfortable in a way he rarely did anymore. Behind him, reflected faintly in the oven door, was someone else. A woman. Blonde. Wrapped in one of my oversized sweatshirts. The timestamp was from that morning. I didn't cry. I didn't gasp. I didn't even drop the phone. My body reacted before my emotions did. A slow, heavy pressure settled in my chest, like gravity had been recalibrated. I asked the only question that mattered. "Who are you?" Her answer came after a minute. "I'm the reason he needed the house empty." That sentence rearranged something inside me. I scrolled back through our recent messages. His encouragement. His reassurance. His pride. The way he'd framed the trip as self-care instead of absence. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't a mistake. It was logistics. I stood up and walked without direction. Past shops. Past people. Past conversations that sounded too loud, too alive. My phone buzzed again. "He told me you'd be gone until Sunday." Sunday. 3 more days. I sat down on the curb this time. Didn't care how it looked. "I need you to understand, this wasn't just betrayal. This was my whole life collapsing. Have you ever been blindsided like this? If you've been there, share your story below. We heal better together." I asked her one last thing. "How long?" Her reply took longer. Long enough for him to stop feeling guilty. That was the lowest point. Not the image. Not the deception. The realization that I had become an obstacle instead of a partner. My phone rang before I could respond. His name lit up the screen. I didn't answer. It rang again. And again. I turned the phone off. For the first time since I'd left home, the quiet felt intentional, but now I understood why. I went back to my room, packed my suitcase without folding anything, and sat on the bed fully dressed. I stared at the door, replaying every moment from the past few weeks with a clarity that bordered on cruelty. The long hug. The rehearsed concern. The way he'd watched me like a plan in progress. I wasn't confused anymore. I was done. And the worst part? He still thought he was in control. I didn't drive home that night. That surprises people when I tell them. They expect urgency. Fury. A dramatic return under cover of darkness. But what I felt instead was something colder. Clarity. I needed control before confrontation. And for the first time since the truth landed, I had it. I checked into a different hotel. Nothing fancy. Just anonymous. I sat on the edge of the bed and made a list, not on paper, but in my head. Practical things first. What I needed to protect. What I needed to confirm. What I needed to let go of. I didn't call him back. I didn't answer his texts. I didn't give him the relief of knowing where I was emotionally. That silence was deliberate. I turned my phone back on just long enough to see the damage he was doing to himself. "Where are you? Why aren't you answering? Did something happen?" I noticed how quickly the tone shifted. Concern bled into irritation. Then panic. The man who had carefully orchestrated my absence hadn't planned for my withdrawal. That mattered. I contacted a lawyer the next morning. Not to file anything yet. Just to understand my position. My options. The language of disentanglement. Knowledge steadied me in a way emotions couldn't. Then I did something else, something quieter, but just as important. I called my bank. I learned which accounts were joint. Which weren't. What could be frozen. What required consent. I didn't act on everything, but I gathered information like armor. Only after that did I allow myself to feel. In small doses. Grief came first. Not for him, for the version of my life I'd believed in. The future plans that now felt fictional. The trust I'd handed over without reservation. Then anger arrived. Clean. Focused. Not explosive. I thought about how easily he'd lied. How he'd watched me pack. How he'd slept beside me knowing he'd already replaced me in his mind. And still, I didn't want revenge. I wanted resolution on my terms. By mid-afternoon, I had a plan. I would go home early. But not announced. Not emotional. I would walk back into my own house as myself, not as the woman he thought he'd outmaneuvered. Before I left town, I texted the unknown number one final time. "Thank you for telling me." She replied almost immediately. "I didn't know about you at first." I swear. I believed her. Or maybe I just didn't have room for more villains. I didn't ask her anything else. The drive back was long. Quiet. I practiced what I wouldn't say. No accusations. No begging. No theatrics. I wasn't going home to perform pain. I was going home to reclaim space. As I pulled into our neighborhood, I felt strangely steady. Like something fragile had already shattered, and what remained was solid. I parked a few houses down and walked the rest of the way. My keys felt heavier than usual in my hand, and I didn't know yet how it would end. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was done being managed. Here's where I made my choice. Do you believe in revenge, or in walking away? When someone destroys your trust, what's the right move? Comment below. I want both sides. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. And that's when everything shifted. The house was quiet when I walked in. Too quiet. No music. No television. No laughter drifting down the hall like it had in the photo. Just stillness, the kind that pretends nothing happened. I closed the door behind me without making a sound. My suitcase stayed by the entryway. I didn't take my shoes off. I didn't call his name. I just stood there and listened. Then I heard movement. The low murmur of voices from the kitchen. I walked forward. Each step felt precise. Controlled. Like my body already knew what to do even if my heart hadn't caught up yet. I turned the corner. They were standing close. Not touching, but familiar. Comfortable. She was wearing jeans now. One of my mugs sat in her hand. He looked up first. The color drained from his face so fast it was almost impressive. "Emily," he said. I held up my hand. "No," I said quietly. Not sharp. Not loud. Just final. She froze. Looked between us. Her mouth opened, then closed again. I addressed her first. "You should go." She hesitated. Looked at him. I said, I repeated, "You should go." She nodded. Set the mug down carefully, like she was afraid of making noise. Grabbed her bag from the counter. As she passed me, she whispered, "I'm sorry." I didn't respond. The door closed behind her. Then there were only two of us. He took a step toward me. "I can explain." I shook my head. "No. You can listen." That surprised him. I could tell. I walked past him and picked up my phone from the counter. Unlocked it. Turned the screen toward him. The photo. He swallowed. "I know everything," I said. Still calm. "How long? Why you wanted me gone? Why you were so proud of me for leaving?" He tried to speak. I cut him off again. "This is the last time I'll stop you," I said. "Use it wisely." He opened his mouth. Closed it. Then finally said, "I didn't mean for it to happen like this." I almost smiled. "That's interesting," I replied. "Because you planned every part except me finding out." Silence stretched between us. "I'm not here to fight," I continued. "I'm here to tell you what happens next." That's when his panic surfaced. "You can't just decide that," he said. "We're married." I met his eyes. "Not in the way that matters." I walked to the hallway and opened the bedroom door. His clothes were already gone from the closet. Half of them, anyway. Packed neatly. Efficiently. He stared past me, realization dawning too late. "I spoke to a lawyer," I said. "I know my options. I know my rights. And I know exactly how much you underestimated me." His voice cracked. "Emily, please." That was the moment everything changed. "Be honest, are you rooting for me right now, or do you think I went too far? Tell me in the comments. I can take it." "I'm not angry," I told him. "I'm finished." I handed him a folder from the nightstand. Printed screenshots. Account statements. Notes. Not accusations, facts. You'll be hearing from my attorney, I said. You have until the end of the week to collect the rest of your things. After that, communication goes through lawyers only. He looked down at the folder like it might explode. You sent me away, I added, because you thought distance made you powerful. It doesn't. It made you careless. He didn't follow me as I walked back to the front door. Didn't try to stop me when I picked up my suitcase. The last thing I said before leaving was quiet. This house is mine tonight. Find somewhere else to sleep. Then I left him standing there, surrounded by the life he'd dismantled. And I didn't look back. The days that followed were quieter than I expected. Not empty, just stripped down. Like the noise had been turned off and I could finally hear my own thoughts without interruption. He moved out within 48 hours. No confrontation. No dramatic goodbye. Just boxes, a borrowed truck, and the sound of a chapter closing without ceremony. I stayed in the house while he packed. Not to watch him, to reclaim the space. Every room felt different once I knew the truth, but it also felt honest for the first time in a long while. I changed the sheets the night he left. Washed everything. Opened windows even though it was cold. I slept deeply, without dreams. The legal process moved slowly. Papers. Waiting. Conversations that were factual and detached. I learned a new vocabulary, one where words like assets and agreements replaced forever and us. It wasn't painless, but it was clean. Friends found out in fragments. Some were shocked. Some admitted they'd noticed things they hadn't known how to name at the time. No one asked me why I didn't see it sooner. And if they had, I wouldn't have answered. Because trust isn't stupidity. It's a choice we make based on the information we have. I took time off work. Not to collapse, to reset. Long walks. Simple meals. Days where productivity wasn't the measure of worth. I learned how quiet strength actually sounds. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It just holds. There were moments of grief, of course. Usually unexpected. Folding a shirt he'd left behind. Finding a photo tucked into a book. Those moments didn't break me. They passed through me. I realized something important during that time. I didn't miss him. I missed who I was when I believed I was safe. That distinction changed everything. The woman who went on that trip believed rest meant leaving herself behind for someone else's convenience. The woman who came home understood that boundaries are not punishments, they are protections. I started making decisions without checking in with anyone else first. Small things. Paint colors. Weekend plans. What I wanted for dinner. It felt strange at first, then freeing. Midway through all of this, I got a message from her. The woman from the photo. I hope you're okay, it read. For what it's worth, he lied to me too. I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. Not out of bitterness. Out of completion. Looking back now, I wonder if I'd do it the same way again. What about you? Was the pain necessary to become who you are today? Let me know below. What surprised me most wasn't how much changed, but how much didn't. I still loved mornings. Still liked order. Still believed in connection. Betrayal didn't harden me. It refined me. I learned that strength doesn't always look like confrontation. Sometimes it looks like clarity. Like leaving without noise. Like choosing yourself without needing permission. By the time the paperwork was finalized, I felt ready. Not healed in a neat, finished way. Just grounded. Aware. I had lost a marriage. But I hadn't lost myself. I used to think betrayal was something you survived by becoming harder. Less trusting. Less open. More guarded. I don't believe that anymore. What I learned is this. Betrayal doesn't demand that you change who you are. It demands that you become more honest about what you deserve. For a long time, I thought love meant endurance. Staying. Adjusting. Making yourself smaller so something else could stay intact. But love that requires your absence isn't love. It's convenience. The trip didn't expose my marriage. It exposed me. It showed me how easily I confused silence with safety. How often I ignored my instincts because being understanding felt more mature than being honest. And how much power there is in calm awareness. When I think back to that phone call, the one that made me turn around, I don't remember the words as clearly as I remember the feeling. Relief. Relief that the uncertainty was over. Relief that I didn't have to keep pretending things were fine. Relief that I finally had permission to stop explaining away my own discomfort. If you're listening to this and something in your life feels slightly off, not dramatic, not explosive, just misaligned, pay attention to that. Discomfort is often information, not fear. You don't need proof to trust yourself. You don't need permission to set boundaries. And you don't need to be loud to be strong. So here's my final question. Is it better to forgive and move on, or to make sure they understand exactly what they lost? There's no wrong answer. Drop it in the comments. So that's my story, folks. If it resonated with you, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far Emily Parker's voice travels. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away quietly, carrying your dignity with you.